Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm your host, Kornelia, and I'm with my co-host, Dennis Gaither. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kornelia. It's always a pleasure to be here doing these conversations with you.
Yes, it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, and we're so delighted to have you here with us because you always bring us these wonderful timely, that's the good word right there, timely topics that we can use right now as we are living heaven on earth, even though we know that on the outside it doesn't seem like we are, but everything happens within, right? So as we're living heaven on earth, you're bringing us this great spiritual wisdom, practical tools on how we can integrate deeper spiritual practice into our lives. And that's why your topics are always very timely and on point.
And I'd like to say a little bit about the timeliness of this particular topic, because there's a lot of things going on about polarization, about racism, about COVID-19. And a number of people have stressed it's just really important just to hear each other, just to listen to each other. Mm-hmm. Often that is what is most needed. And that's what this whole practice here of loving presence is about. It's about a particular way of there are many ways, of course. I'm going to just say this is a way that can be really deep and nourishing. So yeah, I'm happy to share it with you.
Yep. Yeah, and so I didn't use the title yet, but the title of today's show is The Art of Loving Presence. And that's what we're going to get into today. But ladies and gentlemen, I invite you right now to go grab your partners, to go grab your, significant others, your friends, the people that you have relationship with, so that you can participate and listen to ways that can really strengthen your relationship by practicing this loving presence. And Dennis and I are going to, he always has us do these wonderful exercises. We'll do a little bit of that at the end, which is fun. And so, but for now, why don't we start, Dennis, with you telling us, defining what exactly is loving presence?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with actually a little story and a little poem here too. This is a little short poem that we actually often use in our loving presence trainings in Hitomi. And it goes like this. It says, "Nothing else matters half so much. To reassure one another, to answer each other, everyone has inside himself, what shall I call it? A piece of good news." The practice of loving presence is about actually noticing that piece of good news, but actually letting ourselves be nourished by it. But I want to tell you a little story. This happened, it just, kind of came to mind as I was thinking about this. And it happened a few years ago, a number of years ago, and it was involved as part of the preparation for a project overseas. It was with Global Citizen Journey. We've talked about those projects before. This one happened to be the very first one. It was going to Nigeria, to the Niger Delta. And it was an area where there had been a lot of conflict, and we knew that. And so there was a certain anticipation. We were building a library there, finishing a library, but there was also a lot of just fostering connection with ourselves and getting to know each other, and very multifaceted with about 15 North Americans and similar number of Nigerians from different parts of Nigeria. But where the loving presence comes in, not only was that a practice that we used there, but in anticipating this, there was a certain amount of fear about doing this. There was a certain, part of it was kind of excitement, kind of adventure, but then there was a little bit of whoa, a little of both. And so at one of our meetings before that, we did a little process that I led. And part of it was just to everybody say what you're afraid about and put it up there. We put it all on a board. And some of it was about personal safety, but a lot of it was just about, gee, am I up to this task? Can I do this right? Am I going to be insensitive? So there was kind of getting those out, but then divided up into pairs. One person's a listener, one person's a speaker. The speaker's job here is just to talk about whatever your fear is. Then there's a listener, and the listener is just listening in what we call loving presence, which is just a way of just being fully present, not saying anything, not fixing, not making any interventions or advice giving, but not only just quietly, passively listening, not just engaging with the words, but connecting in a deeper kind of way, really looking for and finding something nourishing. And in this case, often it was just being inspired by the courage or the determination or the willingness, and then really taking in that experience of nourishment as the listener and noticing how that impacts the relationship. The effect that it had was quite something. The whole energy of the whole group was just changed completely after we'd completed that, and the fear just kind of faded to the background. It was, there's things we need to take into account. There's like there was an ease, nothing but just simply talking about whatever it is that was on our mind, but then being received by someone who's actually being nourished by us as we're doing that. Mm. So loving presence is actually it's a practice about shifting our attention to a kind of an appreciation, but it's a simply being with and allowing ourselves to be nourished by something about the interaction with the other, about the person. That might be inspiration is one, is very nourishing, but it also can be like calming. I feel reassured that this person understands me. I feel delighted by their energy. I feel energized myself. And in this particular practice, we would then share with the other person how we were nourished by them. So that's basically the idea of loving presence. Let's say a little bit about that. So it's a little bit different from normal conversation, though, because in normal conversation, we're really mostly attending to the story. And it's not that we ignore the story, but we're really much more interested in the storyteller. And what is it about the storyteller that's nourishing us? And so it's in much of normal conversation, some of our focus, if we're in a place of pain or distress, really we tend to be kind of pretty focused within ourselves. Or I might be, I'm here for you, which sounds good, but can be kind of exhausting after a while. But loving presence is about actually being with both. It's about being fully present with the other person, but also with ourselves, because you're not going to be able to tell if you're being nourished or not if you don't feel what's going on inside yourself at the same time. So it's really an attending to self as well as the other. And that is a practice that is not what is in normal conversation, at least not consciously, but it kind of takes it a step beyond usual conversation.
Yeah, I love that. I love it because I practice this loving presence as well. And I know how nourishing it is when you have communication with the other person and you feel actually held, you feel heard, you feel someone's presence is with you, like you feel gotten.
Right.
That feeling, and it's a great feeling. And I really feel like this is a wonderful practice for couples, most especially, to bring into their relationship, to just open it up, even with the invitation. Hey, you want to do loving presence right now? Could we have a session of loving presence, or could we have a communication of loving presence?
Yes, it's a great way to start and end your day. It's a great practice with coworkers. But you can actually practice loving presence. The practice of loving presence is just letting yourself be nourished in many kinds of interactions. So I might just be going to the store. I might just let myself be nourished by something about someone that I see. I may not directly communicate that with them if it's not an appropriate thing to be doing, but I can let myself be nourished anyway. But we teach it and learn it as actually as a practice where we're actually sharing that with shared intention of loving presence.
Do you feel that our audience is being nourished about this conversation?
Well, I'm certainly feeling nourished. When you kind of light up and smile like that, something smiles inside me. I am kind of nourished by the thought that at least some people might be feeling nourished. So that feels kind of good. I get kind of a nice warm feeling about that. But a lot of my own sense of feeling nourished is about my receptivity to it. So that's one of the things about practicing loving presence is if I'm speaking, I'm not trying to make it nourishing. But as I'm listening, I'm open to the nourishment that's naturally there. And there is always something there. There might be an inner beauty, an inner glow. There might be some way in which someone has faced a challenge in their life that moves me or touches me. There might be something in their smile that kind of lights me up, their sense of humor that opens a little space in me. So or there might be just something even beyond what my senses can perceive. It's just sort of like I just feel a loving presence or just a sense of connection or intimacy that for me, then I start to feel safer. It feels like, okay, now I can open my heart more. My protectors can step back more. So it's about actually, so this practice is really about, interestingly, it's not simply about being loving for somebody. It's about actually receiving. But the result is that the person actually does feel more loved and gotten, kind of organically without trying to do it that way. It's quite almost paradoxical, but what could be more juicy for someone than, wow, this person is really feeling nourished by my being here with them. I mean, what could be more juicy than that, to be able to feel that, to know that?
Yes, absolutely.
So then we get into situations where there's challenge, where somebody's talking about something that's really challenging for them. And one can certainly engage that on many levels. It could be on the level of form about whatever the issues are, and that's okay. But if one can kind of hold also, there's something about this person whom I disagree with completely, but there's actually something about them that I actually can be nourished by too.
It's a good way to look at it. It's a really good way to look at it. Why don't
Yeah.
we take a break, Dennis? And when we come back, we're going to talk about how loving presence affects us differently in relationships.
Oh, all righty.
Unless you have something else that you want to.
No, that's good. Let's take a break.
Yep, let's take a break and we'll be right back. We are back. And during the break, Dennis and I were talking about loving presence, and it's raining here in Washington State. And Dennis was saying that we could certainly even be experiencing loving presence with the rain.
Which is just noticing, what I notice with these kind of rainy days is it's kind of atmospheric, it's kind of intriguing. There's a kind of a little heart opening. There's a certain beauty about it. An inward turning, nice day to read a book by the fire.
It is. It is.
So yeah. I get nourished by it.
Being nourished by the rain, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So how does loving presence affect us differently in our relationships? I think this is a big one because we relate with everything and we have relationship with everything. So then in our personal relationships or in our co-working relationships, how does loving presence affect us?
Well, it really can shift the energy. I mean, I'll tell you just a brief little story. This is with a person that I have traveled and done workshops with often, and these were busy setting things up and doing these things. They were could be kind of intense, and I remember this happened more than once, but we were just sort of a little bit at odds and a little bit of tension. Then we realized, oh, you know what? We didn't do loving presence when we started off the day here. Mm-hmm. So at lunch, we just stopped and did a few minutes of loving presence, and then it just kind of like everything just relaxed. So things relax, space opens up. There's kind of a certain comfort for both people. There's kind of a safety there. So it can move in many different ways. You can't specify it too much, but things, whatever might be in the way, can move. In our Hitomi trainings, we start each day with loving presence as a way to just get grounded. For me, there's also a sense of this gets me grounded, gets me here, especially if I've been busy getting things set up in my doing mode. It's that practice of sitting down with somebody and just doing loving presence for a few minutes that grounds me, gets me here, and connects me with the other person.
Yes, and basically it really brings your full presence here. It's almost kind of like shifting gears with whatever and just being here. It's coming into the present moment.
Yes, it is. But it's also for me just being in loving presence, but also then feeling the loving presence of the other person. Mm-hmm. It's really affirming. It's really nourishing. I feel really appreciated.
Yes, and I think that's I understand that, because even using the words loving presence relaxes the being. Like as soon as I use the words loving presence, I'm relaxed, because I feel this is the intent, this is the intention of this co-creative experience, and I can relax because this is what we're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, part of it, there's no agenda. I'm not trying to fix something. I don't have to solve a problem. I'm just being there and just kind of allowing something to come in.
That's so nice that we don't have to solve any problems during love and presence.
Believe me, I've got a problem solver part that you have to I have to kind of ask it to step back and chill once in a while. But it has its usefulness, but it gets a little overactive sometimes. But loving presence is a good balance for that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So would you say there are key principles behind loving presence?
Well, I think the really key one is that there's always something, really every interaction, if we're open to it, there is something. There is something that can nourish us. And it could be many different things. I mean, it could be, well, inspiration as a common one, but it might have something to do with what the person's talking about, or it might be completely unrelated to that. It could be their smile, the way the light is, the intimacy of the situation that can fill us. So the main principle is a sense of openness, is receptiveness, and it's a receptiveness of just receiving, and it's an intention to. One of the principles that would be mindfulness. This was a very relational mindfulness kind of practice. It's being mindful of myself in relation to another person in that moment, in a way that is really open to something in them that is nourishing. There's always something. I guess always something is some bit of good news is really a key principle. And maybe it has to do with that our essence, there is something really inherently delightful about our essence. And as we open to that, we get closer and closer to that in the other person. And that gets us closer and closer to that essence in ourselves. We're really kind of using that relationship interaction to open ourselves to our own essence.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. So how did loving presence originate?
Well, I have to acknowledge a couple of teachers. The principal one would be Ron Kurtz, who actually was the main creator of Homey, and also Donna Martin, who has the most incredible quality of loving presence about her of anybody I've ever encountered. But the story I've heard is that Ron basically just sort of stumbled upon it. A client taught him, basically somebody that he was having some challenge with. And he finally at some point just decided just to sit back, listen, and just find something to appreciate about this person. And so he just did. So he just didn't really pay that much attention to the person's story. It didn't ignore it, but it was mostly focused just there's something about this. And he noticed he felt more relaxed. He wasn't so burned out and frustrated, but also the person started to change too. And so then that became sort of the background practice for Hitomi, is when we don't know what else to do or to start with, we just start with loving presence. One way of saying that is start of the conversation or the interaction. Just find something is inspiring to you. Find something that nourishes you right off the bat. Just start there. And that just sets the tone.
That does, because would you say that unconsciously, because it's about being conscious or unconscious, would you say that unconsciously when people are not thinking in this way or practicing this way, that the habit or normal way, or what we've done before, is we would interact with people, and when we're not thinking that way, we would be uh, perceiving something different when we're not positioning ourselves that way, where do they like me, do they approve of me, or maybe even having a judgment around the person,
right.
whatever.
Do I approve of them? So we're much more likely in those kind of instances to be basing judgments of ourselves or others based on past experience rather than what's just right there in the moment. And so this is an invitation to be like, there's something beautiful there in this moment. And it's really about just kind of noticing it. And as you start to attend to it in your own awareness, it tends to start to bring the other person's awareness to that.
I think too, what I just had a realization about is that it appears that that will calm the ego right off the bat. As soon as you start practicing loving presence, this is one of the side effects. The ego is not present in that.
Yeah, well, it certainly steps back a little bit. I mean,
right?
It's not to try to manipulate their behavior,
right.
but it does have an influence. It does have an influence.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, because we're practicing loving presence, and we're looking for the good news. We're seeing the good news, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for something nourishing. So there's nothing judgmental about that. That's why I said, oh, the ego is not here, because spirit is listening and looking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to let the audience know, for those of you that don't know about Hitomi, because you've mentioned it a couple times, and for people that are just tuning in for the first time, you are a Hitomi practitioner.
I'm actually one of the senior trainers for the Seattle Hitomi Educational Network, and if you Google Seattle Hitomi, you'll find us. And we have workshops and training, including a 2-day-long workshop on loving presence. And we're in our adaptation to the new thing here is we're actually this year for the first time offering some of these trainings online. They've always been experiential in person, but for right now we're doing them online. It includes loving presence, and there's another one called quieting the mind, nourishing communication, and nonverbal awareness. All those are important parts of this work. So I would just really encourage those interested, Google Seattle Hitomi, and you'll get our website and our offerings and read all about us.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you, because this is an opportunity for you to have an experience also with Dennis Gaither, because he is, like you said, he's one of the senior practitioners there. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to practice with him and others, which is great, because people I know would like to know how they can get personally, involved with you. And this would be one of the ways, right?
That's right.
Right. So what was the website again, Dennis?
Pardon? I just said that's right.
No, I said, I know, but what was the website again?
It's just, it's actually seattlehitomi.com. www.seattlehitomi.com. Or if you Google Seattle Hitomi, you'll get us.
Good. Okay, good. So why don't we take another break, and when we come back, let's find out how we can practice. What are some of the practical ways, and how do you practice loving presence in your everyday life? Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. We'll be right back. Dennis, how do you use loving presence in practical ways?
Well, in practical kind of ways, just to be very, very practical about it, I think of it as it's a mindless practice. And so it's about relational mindfulness. It's about, first of all, noticing what my own habits might be in being with another person. So things like little parts of me that might want to fix something or solve something. So it's about all of us. First of all, just noticing our habits that might get in the way, and then inviting those to step aside, kind of interrupting them in some way. But then it's like I'd like to take a breath here, taking a breath and just kind of what we call seeing through. It's like seeing beyond the surface. And that's really not like a strain to see beyond. It's more like I'm just sort of willing to. I'm willing to see beyond whatever the stuff here is. And as I start to do that, as we start to do that, there's something of the essence that comes through. And it just follows then to just really receive that as nourishment. And it's really more about just kind of receiving the felt sense of the nourishment. And then maybe if I were to communicate about it, I might have to put a word to it, but it's really about more just experiencing the felt sense of it. And a lot of times it's just the feeling of connection, the feeling of interaction. And just there's kind of a delight, like in this conversation, just sort of a delight in connecting with you in this way and being able to share about this. There's something that whenever I am sharing something that seems meaningful to me, that's just like somebody will take this and it will be useful somewhere or helpful to someone that I'll never meet. That, for some reason, that always just touches my heart in some way. I sort of have a sense of a larger awareness.
Yes, I love that because it's one of those things like, it's that inspiration, like, oh, like when you're opening up, a piece in a book, a good piece, and you're reading a quote or something, it's exactly something that you needed to hear. And so like the conversation that you and I are having here, and that whoever's listening, this, will inspire and nourish them on a level that we don't even know about, right? And what a good feeling that is, that it is serving and it is helping. Yeah.
I like to just envision with all the different things happening in the world today. I like to just see that as the idea, envision this being a way of people engaging with each other more and more.
I love that.
What an impact that could make in how the world is, really. So there's a personal level of how it can be impactful, but there's of course kind of a vision of something much larger than my personal experience that feeds me as well.
Yeah.
Just holding that vision there's a sense of expansion that I appreciate with that.
Yeah, I love that. I'll support you in that vision. Definitely. Let that ripple out.
Yep, I know that's been very much a shared purpose you and I have had. Very much. Yep.
It's beautiful. We want to see it in the school systems. We want to see it in the government. We want to see it in the workplace. We want to see it in the healthcare system. Like when you walk into the doctor's office, that you have a moment of loving presence. I mean,
yep.
In all places.
Good. Yep. And it's kind of the key, I think, is just remembering it, because it's easy to get caught in the busyness of the day. I do it. I get caught in the busyness of the day, but then when I do remember, it shifts things. So sometimes I just have to notice the busyness and okay, time to step back.
Yeah. And so what do you think that, how can someone develop and strengthen and deepen their loving presence practice?
Well, some of the steps that I was just referring to, but we can do some practices here. We can actually let's just do some here.
Okay.
And you and I can just demo them now. Given our time frame here, we're going to do very much condensed versions of them, but maybe just enough people can get a flavor and then take them into their own life if they want to. But the first of these is one that we call being with. Being with. It's very simple. It's about self-study, about what is it like, what do I notice inside myself, just simply being with another person. And the way we do this is just with two people, and I think we can do this just the way we are right here. And there are no words. It's just in silence. And we're just simply being with one another. And it starts with just kind of closing eyes and going inside. And then when you're ready, opening eyes. And just noticing, even as I start to open eyes, what happens as I start to do that? Maybe I'll notice something, and maybe I want to close my eyes again just to study something inside. And then maybe I'll open my eyes again. So it's not about eye gazing. I mean, there is likely to be eye contact, but sometimes I might have my eyes open and yours are closed, or vice versa. But then we can study, well, what happens then? What happens if I open my eyes and her eyes are closed? So it's really just about self-study. What happens just being with somebody? What comes up for me? Okay, so let's just do this. We'll just do this for about, thinking we could do this for about 2 minutes here.
Are we not going to be talking? Are you not going to be talking when we're doing this?
Yep, for 2 minutes.
You won't be talking for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are listening on the podcast, you're still here.
Okay. Well, I can shorten it to about a minute. That is kind of a hard, long time. Let's shorten it to about a minute or so.
Okay.
But I'm going to suggest, if you're actually doing this with someone, to take a lot longer time than that.
Oh yeah.
10 minutes or whatever you're comfortable with is a better amount of time. But we're just demoing here. So all right. So we can just go ahead and just begin. I'm going to close my eyes and stop talking. So that's pretty close to a minute. And so sometimes I had my eyes closed, and sometimes I opened them, and sometimes closed. So there was a little bit of my awareness was the idea, this is a recording, this is kind of a demo thing. So there was a little bit of my awareness going there, I just noticed.
I had that. I had a thought that, we're recording, people are listening, I hope they're okay, kind of thing.
There was a little bit of that. How long are we going to leave them in the quiet? So I think that might have impacted just simply being with you in that way.
But I wasn't there long. It just was a second. I brought myself back. It's like, it's just that brought myself back right here, right now.
Yeah.
In the state of being, because this was the piece is.
Right. And there's no right or wrong way. It's about just discovering whatever. And sometimes the situation in which we're doing this practice will influence whatever we're noticing. So it's just like self-studying. We like to say in Hitomi workshops that we have the smallest police force in the world. There's nobody signs up for it. You can't do it wrong. We can't do it wrong. Whatever you notice coming up, even if it's a lot of distractions and things, okay, that's noticing. That's one of the things, that's just noticing something comes up, just being with someone.
Well, isn't that the same thing when we're by ourselves and we're going into meditation and you've got the mind wanting to go and
absolutely
about things, right? And it's like you have to bring yourself back to the present moment. Just there's the thought.
Yeah. So it's really just like that, except we're just adding in the factor of this with another person. Mm-hmm. So it's mindfulness practice with another person, relational mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So let's take this practice we just did just a little bit deeper. And for this part, it probably is helpful to have the eyes open a fair amount of the time, but it's not all the time. But it starts the same way, just being with, no words. Maybe we do need to allow a couple minutes for this, because we move then to then appreciating that as part of our human experience, everyone has experienced challenges. Everyone has had challenges, difficulties, sorrows, losses. And so we just kind of being with the other person with an awareness that this person in front of you has experienced that without knowing what it is. Just with, and see how that affects the filter as you're being with them. That's part two. The third part then is that in spite of that, they've persevered, they've overcome, they've had strength, they've showed strength. They're here, they survive. So there's something very moving about that. So it's in recognizing their strength in overcoming that. And so then we focus on that and notice how that affects the filter. So we're just being with, but now we're intentionally shifting the filters around a little bit. One is the acknowledgement of the human condition. There's been suffering, there's been challenge. And then there is the acknowledging that there has also been strength. There's been perseverance, or even just stubbornness. There's been something that's gotten them through and gotten them here, gotten them doing this kind of stuff. Got it?
Hey.
All right. So maybe for this one, we probably really should take 2 minutes. But if someone is doing the audio, just listening by audio, maybe if you're with someone, you could do the same thing. Or if you're by yourself, you can just imagine someone you know. Just imagine being with someone you know. And first, just take a few moments of just imagine yourself just sitting, being quietly with them. And then imagine just kind of the awareness that they have had challenges in their life. There's been pain, there's been loss. Seeing how that affects your being with them in your imagination. And then finally, but there's also some strength that's enabled them to get through it, to survive, to overcome. Something that might be inspiring. So just kind of shift the awareness to that and notice how that affects your filter.
So since we're doing 2 minutes, we do 1 minute on the challenges part and the 1 minute on the perseverance part. Does that sound?
I think it basically, it's just take 2 minutes to kind of move through all those. It's better to not interfere with, it's just kind of move through those at your own pace, basically.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, yeah. All right, I'm going to start. There we go. Wow, lovely. So I'll say what I noticed is there were places there where I could feel it early on. There was a deep sense of compassion. There was a kind of a feeling of kind of a sense of some sadness and a sense of compassion and kind of tender feeling. And kind of would close my eyes and go back inside. And one of the places where I opened up, and then there was like a sense of a depth. I felt a real kind of a feeling of going really deep, like wisdom or something behind all that. And and so I felt kind of drawn into some deep place with you, without words. And then kind of coming back again. Then there was kind of a sweetness, kind of a tenderness. It seemed like there was a sense of softening as this went by, even in this little time, and then finally kind of a lightness. That it seemed like kind of a shared energy of lightness. That at least that was how I was experiencing it.
You're using my words, because the experience that I felt initially at the start was also compassion.
Mm-hmm.
The compassion was just melting compassion is what I was feeling. And I was there for a while, and after that it was um, there was an opening softness
Mm-hmm.
of softness, and even, melting into the softness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now I'm in compassion and in softness, and just feeling at one with all of that, with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I opened my eyes, I'm looking at you and your face is changing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
When you're talking to me about laughter or lightness, what I wanted to start laughing, because I saw your face changing. I
Mm-hmm.
saw your face changing.
Yeah, I saw yours change as well. Yes. It's
So,
changing even as we speak.
yeah. So I started, and so that was the thing about the laughter. I mean, I didn't want to just start laughing, but that's what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So great.
Yeah.
Great
So
experience.
yeah. So that's called being with 1, 2, 3. So we've done being with it. Those are
Okay.
just very simple. No words, just being with the other person with mindfulness. That's all we did.
Yeah.
Powerful.
But you set the stage, Dennis, because, you set the stage to remind us, which I think is an important piece, is to have the understanding to know that there has been challenges, that there's been suffering, there's been loss. When we can approach and be with another person with that level of understanding, no matter what, again, the ego is quiet. uh, to me right away, it's like, boom, we move straight into compassion.
Mhm.
And, you set the stage for that. And then after that, you know, you talked about looking at it from seeing the wisdom, seeing the perseverance, the strength that got that person through those losses and that suffering, which I think is important to note.
Mhm. Well, for me, it evoked both a sense of compassion for myself too,
Yeah.
but also is kind of my own filter of seeing your strength was kind of strengthening for me as well. It was sort of like it wasn't just you or me; it was like us.
Well, and the other thing for me, I had to, because I know you personally, and and I already have my way of seeing you. So when that came in a moment, because of how I see you, you know I think I've shared this with you privately, is in your highest. So, but being able to even put that aside and just be present with just what is right now in you, without me knowing you in that sense,
Right,
uh, was also something that I experienced with this.
right, lovely, and that's key is to be able to set the history aside and just be present. So the last practice, and we can maybe just do like a minute or two of it, but it would be nice to do the practice called loving presence, even if we just do it very briefly.
Okay.
I think we have enough. I think we've got about 7 minutes or something left, don't we?
No, we don't. We don't.
What time do we have?
Zach, how much time do we have left? Oh, not much, Dennis.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll just describe that practice then.
Okay.
Maybe let's do 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, each person can talk for about half a minute about whatever they want to speak about. The other person's just going to listen and just find something in that 30 seconds that's nourishing. And then we trade roles. So let's see if we can do speed loving presence here.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. So do you want to speak first or listen first?
I will listen.
Okay, you'll listen. All right. So I'm just going to, whatever is coming up to mind is I'm actually feeling really quite excited. There's just a little bit of a nervousness too. Wow, this is really fast. But then I'm attending to the rain outside, and it's something actually very soothing and comforting with that. So then I'm taking a breath and just kind of like really taking in the rain. Okay, it's my turn. So you can just say something, whatever came to mind that might have felt nourishing to you, and we'll trade roles.
Okay, well, what came to mind is what felt nourishing is the rain, being nourished by the rain. You brought my awareness back to the rain because I'm also hearing it from both sides, from here and here. It's really coming down, and I was nourished by the rain there. And so we have 2 minutes. And so do you want me to go start talking now?
Start talking 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
Just a few seconds worth, and we'll see what comes up. I'm already kind of being nourished by some things, but here, go ahead.
What comes up for me is that I'm moving tomorrow, and how relaxed I am. I mean, this is a huge piece. I'm moving households tomorrow. I'm moving my home from this home to another home, and I'm at peace, and I feel really like I got this, and it's all good, even though it's a huge time. So.
Okay. And when you said that, something in me just sort of relaxed. It just went boom. Because I get anxious about moving, and I know this has been a stressful change for you, but when you said, and I'm at peace with that, or something equivalent to that, I felt something just calm.
Yay.
So there we go. We did it.
We
did speed, loving present.
You got 1 minute, Dennis, to close.
I'm going to read a poem to you here. I'm going to read a poem to you here. All right. This is called When Someone Deeply Listens to You by John Fox. When someone deeply listens to you, it's like holding out a dented cup that you've had since childhood and watching it fill up with cold, fresh water. When it balances on top of the brim, you're understood. When it overflows and touches your skin, you're loved. When someone deeply listens to you, the room where you stay starts a new life, and the place where you wrote your first poem begins to glow in your mind's eye. It's as if gold has been discovered. When someone deeply listens to you, your bare feet are on the earth, and a beloved land that seemed distant is now at home within you. Love that poem. Love this practice. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Dennis. Always a loving pleasure to have you on and to be with you. Thank you, beloved audience. We'll see you again next time. And thanks, Dennis.
Blessings. Thank you, Kornelia. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.